Mzamo, I am so happy that we're having this moment together.
Thanks, Dorothy.
It's been many years since I started this podcast. I have wanted to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
And so I'm really glad we're here. As we normally do, let's start with a moment of just breathing in, settling in. Yeah? Technology has been overwhelming me here. So let's take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Another deep breath in and a deep breath out. And now let the breathing return to its normal rhythm. Just feeling your breath in and out. And come back to this moment. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the time. You're in Nairobi.
Yes.
And this is such a rare moment. Maybe for those who don't know you, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much. I was born in South Africa during apartheid, so at the height of apartheid, and that shaped me. And born in a township called Guguletu, and then I grew up in a village in the Eastern Cape, which was good and bad. And then I came back to Cape Town, and I grew up in Khayelitsha. And I would say the things that shaped me then was apartheid, poverty, absent father, because my father abandoned me when I was less than a year old. So absent father, and mother working as a janitor from age 15, 16 till she decided to go back to school. So that shaped me a lot, because when I was in high school, my mom was in high school with me.
Wow.
So and then she went back to school, she then went to university, and
What
she
an amazing woman.
qualified as a social worker
Wow.
in her 40s.
Wow.
And she only started working in her late 40s as a social
We
worker.
must have been so proud of her.
Yeah, and then did other degrees. Age 50, she did a master's at Stellenbosch University, and so she's my role model, visible role model.
Right, and those who don't know, you're a PhD holder. You're Dr. Mzamo Masito, as we should call you. So she inspired you.
She inspired me because you are born, my belief is that you are born into families to know, you need to know your family curses and blessings. And you need to then choose which cycle you are going to break.
That is so profound. Just say that again.
So if you are born in any family, you need to be deliberate and intentional in knowing what your family curses and blessings are. And then also then make an intentional, conscious, soulful decision on which of cycle you are going to break.
Right.
Because I think we are born into families and bloodlines to break cycles and to start new cycles.
Right.
So in my case, my mother broke the cycle of illiteracy, and which she set a new standard of what excellence looks like. Whereas if she didn't, maybe dropping out of high school would have been normal, because already apartheid and poverty had normalized illiteracy.
Right.
And so she broke that, and she set a new standard, which then meant all her kids had now a new standard to look up to and a new line.
Right.
And then us not going to school now was abnormal, whereas at some point it would have been normal. And she set a new standard, and her having her certificate or graduation photo hung up in a wall, it's new, but it's much easier to believe what you can touch and see.
Right.
Yeah, our faith is not as close to God yet. We still need to touch things. That's why I think we go to church or mosque or synagogue.
Right.
That's why we still believe in probably pastors and priests and rabbis, because we still need to touch.
Right.
We are tactile people, and we see, touch, feel, hear. Unfortunately, we haven't evolved fast enough to just believe without touching.
Right.
So it helped. She set a new standard. So I feel like from that, then it made me think, okay, if she's broken the cycle up to a master's degree, what's the next cycle?
Right. But you've talked about your mom in the fact that she was intentional. What about people who feel, I'm born into this family, there's nothing I can do, and have resigned to their fate, to poverty, to this is the only way out for me?
It happens because it's poverty is trauma. So we must all accept that we should be, there's a fine line where this kind of positive psychology talk or therapy talk around take individual responsibility, all of that. But if you grew up in Kibera, it's not that you are not taking individual responsibility, but the odds are stacked against you, and very few make out. They are actually outliers other than normal. So we should also factor in that poverty in itself is trauma.
Right.
Noise is trauma. Poverty affects cognitive bandwidth. There's no way you can think of a Silicon Valley while still trying to survive. So you are in constant survival. So I empathize with people who have decided to give up, because even people who grew up in middle class, upper class also give up.
True.
So it's not like it's a thing that is only assigned to the poor. It's also assigned to every class, that there are a segment of people in every class that give up. But it tends to be disproportionately more amongst the have-nots.
Right.
Whereas if you have some and have lots, they also tend to have more support, which they are either parents or themselves, they can afford to pay for therapy, to pay for this, to pay for that, which gets them out of that situation. Whereas if you're a have-not, you don't have those resources that will help you get out of that space that you find yourself in, where your feelings have turned into a mood.
Right.
So I think there must first be empathy that acknowledges that poverty is trauma, and that it takes a lot to get out of that situation that you find yourself in. And then luckily we also know that there are those who do get out.
Right.
So then the least we can do is to ask those who've got out to never forget to go back.
Right.
Because like running, which when I worked at Nike, I used to make this observation that Kipchoge is an amazing, greatest athlete. But my hypothesis has always been, through him, you are unlikely going to grow the 21K, 10K, 42K marathon runners or half marathon runners. Because when we look at him, we see a God. And we see someone who God just blessed and is exceptional. The people that help you, that help the running category grow, is when someone looks at their friend who also ran a 21K, who looks like them, and deep down maybe they even think they're better than them. They can run better than them or hike even better than them. Then, and they hear that their friend tells them they completed a 21K or 42, then they start thinking,
they're motivated.
yeah,
I can do it.
if he or she can do it, I can do it.
Right.
You see which then for me again goes to this thing that what you see and touch and proximity makes things much easier.
Right.
So I think those who have grown up in Kibera or grown up in places where people can easily lose hope, they now need to go back and be the hope, be some hope, and give back to the community and inspire others to know that it's possible. But most of the time, those who have left such spaces, they never go back.
But you have gone back, and you have gone back to your community, and being who you are, Black person in South Africa, you are inspiring many Tell me a bit about, you talked about the three things that shaped you. Apartheid was one of them. So there's your mom, your family.
Yep.
But tell me how apartheid shaped you.
For me, apartheid like shaped me because from a young age you were told that you are inferior, you should be grateful, and you were told from a young age that white people came and saved us,
Right.
and that we were barbaric and heathens, and
that's what colonialism also
Yes.
did. Yes.
so I grew up with this inferiority complex
Right.
of not thinking I was worthy and not thinking I was intelligent enough, until luckily I went to the US at 16, 17, and amazingly the kind of divine intervention is when I'm in the US in Washington DC, and I decide to go to Anacostia because I was missing black people, and because I was living in Tenley town and I was the only black person there
Right.
in that town, and I kept getting stopped by the police all the time. So I thought, let me go to a place where there's people who look like me. When I get to Anacostia, I walk about the projects there, and then I see a church. I go inside that church, and when I look up the church, they had the Last Supper, Jesus' Last Supper, disciples, Mary. But the amazing thing, for the first time, all the disciples were black, and Jesus was black, and Jesus had dreadlocks, and some of the disciples had cornrows, afro, you name it. And for me, amazingly, up to age 17, I have never seen that image before.
Yeah, a black disciple.
Yeah, and a black Jesus.
Christ, yes.
And I remember out loud saying in the church, wow, this can't be. And then an old man came and said to me, why not young blood? And I realized how I had a lot of work to do to decolonize my own mind.
Right.
To realize that why can't God be in my own image?
Right.
And why does God have to be in someone's image who looks like they only use Head and Shoulders or Pantene and they don't use anything else? So that helped a lot. That actually, I would say, it's when art becomes a tool for social change. So art, actually, that artist, whoever painted that, helped a child seek freedom, mental freedom. And from that day on, I started reading who we are, who we were before colonization,
Right.
who we are as black people during colonization, during apartheid, post-colonization. Then I started reading. Then Steve Biko or Frantz Fanon or Paulo became my people I want to understand who am I.
Right.
And who should I be, and why I should be proud, and why should I not have a superiority complex, but I also should not have an inferiority complex. So that helped a lot. Like, I must say, what apartheid did, it just messed up with the mind.
And that's what colonialism did as well.
Because Steve Biko says that the greatest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And the master leaves, but the master stays in our head.
Exactly. Even 50 years
50
after
years.
independence.
It takes forever to now sort of like cleanse your mind from the master and be your own person and be your own human.
Right.
And so, but it requires then we all torture our souls to confess the truth about us and also to shed the master's whispering.
How do we shed that? How do we shed? If I look in Kenya, for instance, I see you shared the video, the powerful video of this young girl who was singing this song and realized she'd sung this in school and then realized this is what I'm seeing in this movie. I've been singing the British national anthem and not. How do we change this?
It's we all have to accept that it's going to be an ultra marathon. So it's not a microwave like instant thing that will just change. But if we are intentional and proactive and deliberate, we will transcend it.
Right.
But then it means all the institutional structures that matter when you go to a religious institution, how they preach, it matters that they decolonize the mind.
Right.
So religion should also be a tool for mental freedom, not just giving hope only. There should be
That's
a
powerful.
preaching that helps one become mentally free.
Right.
And when you go to school, which are the important institutions, the curriculum needs to be designed towards decolonizing the mind. So there has to be things that are changing in the curriculum.
Right.
Even studying African history, studying who we are, where we come from, there has to be a more deliberate, intentional, proactive effort from even our politicians, where they are not always portraying an image that the West is superior, and to be anything you have to be white.
Right.
And so there has to be a change. It's kind of like then parents, because there's three institutions that matter most.
Right.
It's the religious institution, whether it be a synagogue, a mosque, or a Christian church, or a Hindu temple,
Or traditional.
that traditional African tradition, that matters a lot. The family institution at home, that matters a lot. The third one, school, because you're spending a lot of your time at school. So if you just focus on these three, I feel like we have a far better chance. Like if we are just a lot more deliberate, and even when teaching parents how they speak to their kids about their history,
Right.
and all of that. So I think over time, just like other countries like the Asians, whether it be Japanese or Chinese or South Koreans, they also had to go through an identity revival.
Right.
They also had to go through sort of like taking the shackles off from their master. Same if you look at Singapore.
Right.
It's been done before. So it's not like it hasn't been done before. So at least we have templates everywhere in the world where we know that you can, but it has to be a more deliberate, intentional program that we put in place that helps us become who we are. And by the way, it doesn't mean that we should now all of a sudden not learn from the West and not learn from the East, because we're social creatures.
Yes.
We should be learning from everyone. We should
From each other.
become
Right.
we should become sea sponges, but we should not have an inferiority complex.
Right.
So I should still learn from the West.
Right.
I should learn from the East
Right.
and adopt and adapt what they are doing, but infuse my own cultural context, my own cultural nuance, my own immediate context, and not just copy paste things I'm learning from the West and the East, because they have their own context there.
Yes.
They have their own cultural nuances, situational context. So it is important then I come in with a pride, self-pride and self-awareness for my own identity. And then I go to the Western, which is no different from what Japanese, Chinese, Singaporeans, whether it be Vietnam, have been doing, going to learn from others,
And then
come back
Right.
and do it the Japanese way. So it's not like they're not gonna learn how to make a car from the US or Sony. We're not gonna, but they will do it the Japanese way rather than just copy paste.
Right.
Same in Singapore, they will learn from everyone, but they will do it their way.
Right.
So we also have to, but the first phase is just using all the important cultural institutions, including art. I mean, art is an amazing institution for me, whether it be soccer, sport, or just music.
Right.
So because artists are supposed to be truth tellers.
Oh, and I want to come back. Actually, I want to come back. We're going to unpack this art because you talked about it before, that art is a tool for social change. But let's just finish on this third part, family. You said family is also where we learn.
Yes.
You were raised with an absent father and a mother who is just a hero, who then took you and did what she did. How did that affect you? Being raised without a father, and now you are a father.
Yes.
And how do you show up for your children?
The challenge with, there's a thing in psychology where they talk about adverse childhood effects and childhood trauma and just childhood wounds. One of the greatest woundings for a child is abandonment and betrayal. And that stays with you for a very long
Yes.
time. And
Yeah.
it shows up later in life through how you handle your own relationships.
Right.
And in my case, it's been bad in that because I grew up for a while like without a biological father, and then my mother remarried my stepfather when I was a teenager. But my stepfather is he was a complicated human being because he was very violent and abusive, yet he was responsible.
Right.
So it's very himself tortured human being.
His own trauma.
Yes, he had his own traumas, but what it does, you handle relationships badly. In my case, I find I've handled relationships badly, and also you handle pain badly, and then also you develop a psyche of abandoning the ship before it abandons you. So you're always thinking you will be abandoned, so best to beat the person and jump the ship before they
we leave our traumas,
yeah,
isn't it? Huh?
Because someone once said, you don't live a life, you live a pattern.
Right.
So you are
That is so
actually
good.
living a pattern, and that pattern is mostly built up from your childhood, and you're just living a pattern. So I've been living a pattern of shaking off the kind of pain of abandonment, and then with my kids, is that I had made a commitment that I want to be a present father. The challenge then is also disciplining my kids is a challenge because I grew up with little and abandonment, so now I want to give my kids a life I never had.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like I have also unintentionally robbed them of hardship.
Right, where they can fight for things.
Yes, so therefore their resilience and grit sometimes is not strong.
Right.
Because my resilience and grit comes from the fact that I grew up in hardship.
Not having.
Right. And they have lots. And so it's been a tricky balance as a parent on how do you give your kids what you never had while also helping them develop perseverance, emotional grit, help them to adapt and evolve immediately. So it's been a struggle. I don't think I've cracked it.
Yes.
And also,
do your kids understand that that's the struggle you have as a father? You want to give them everything, but you also want to hold back so that they get to develop the resilience.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
I
think sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't, because it's not fair for them, because that's the life that they've been brought in as the life of privilege. So I can't be dragging them to a life of underprivilege. So it's they didn't ask for it.
Wow.
They got the genetic lottery of being born in this time. I got my own genetic lottery of being born in scarcity.
Right.
They are not born in scarcity, they are born in abundance. So I have to, as a parent, also learn new ways, learn new tools, which I'm not always fully equipped to have. Like, so you do with what you, like I've always said, people, parents are human. They just also human, so they have limitations, and we should just forgive them more.
But we think as kids that our parents need to be perfect.
No,
they need to be like God.
Our parents, I mean, I look at my mom now, and I look at my stepfather, I realize that he is a product of his own upbringing as well. I mean, it's the same with my biological father. When I found him, I then started trying to do research.
Did you go actively looking for him?
My mom's sister found him, my aunt, late now, blessed her soul. She found him for me.
Okay.
No, my father was not looking for me.
Okay. All right.
I didn't know my father, so I would have passed him on the street.
Wow.
I didn't even have a photo or nothing, so I didn't even know.
Wow.
And I started trying to understand him, and I realized that one of the things when I ask people around in his village, and I'm interviewing and I'm asking him about his life, and I realize that his own father, which is my grandfather, abandoned him. So that's why I'm convinced
Trauma
that
is passed on.
we repeat, because we
Right.
are all suffering from intergenerational traumas that are passed on genetically now. So there's just a genetic pass on trauma. And so, and I'm convinced that that is what happened to my dad as well. And I'm not condoning what he did, but now I can have more empathy that he is a product of his own pain,
Right.
his own upbringing. So I can, when I see him, I can see him with a lot more empathy. And I can forgive with a lot more empathy because I know how it feels like
Right.
to be abandoned. And unfortunately, us as humans, we either repeat it or we break it.
Yes.
And most of the time, unfortunately, we repeat more than we
Right.
break
Right.
cycles.
Why is it that we repeat instead of breaking?
That which we do not confront grows and we shrink. And I think we are burdened by heavy past traumas that they weigh you down. And also, because we are running away, not towards, we just end up repeating.
Right.
Because we are not confronting. If we are not confronting our colonial, how colonialism shaped us, how apartheid shaped us, how an absent father shaped you, you are more bound to repeat it. And the thing that you hate the most, you become most of the
Right.
time. So
Right.
because you have too many blind spots, because your hate will consume you,
Wow.
and you will have so many blind spots that you will become the thing that you hate or despise. And-
That is so profound. That which you do not confront grows
And you shrink.
and you shrink.
And so we,
Yeah.
unless we decide head on, like my father, when my mother intentionally confronted illiteracy by going back to school, but that's so that she stopped shrinking,
Right.
and that so that she can face her dragons and beast and be bigger than them.
Right.
And they don't go away, by the way. When I'm saying you confront things, doesn't mean those things all of a sudden vanish. They lie there dormant, waiting for times when you are weak to creep up on you again. But at least if you're facing them head on,
Yeah.
you end up having tools that you can use to manage the times when they creep up again and they come back again. But at least you're an even far stronger, better person than before.
Right.
So it's the same when I looked at my dad. He passed away actually in December last year. And when I look at him, I realize that earlier on in my life, I repeated his mistakes.
Wow. That which you didn't want to become.
Yes, I became
Yes.
exactly like him. And then only over time, when I was confronting my own soul, torturing my own soul to confess the truth about me and about my own childhood adverse effects,
Right.
my own childhood traumas, I realized that, okay, one of the things I need to do is understand my father, empathize, forgive for myself. Not because I condone what he did or that he abandoned me, but I need to figure out a way to lighten
Right.
the load.
Right.
Or else I'm dragging this cross everywhere with me,
Right.
and I end up bleeding on the people who did not cut me. Because either way, that pain shows up somewhere. It will show up at work as a leader. It will show up as a husband or a partner or a father.
Right.
It will show up.
Right. Right.
Because it has to show up somewhere. So it won't just disappear. It will show up. So you will end up hurting people who did not cut you.
Right.
And you'll end up
Right.
bleeding on people who didn't cut you.
Right.
So that's why for me, I feel like this intentionality matters, and being deliberate and intentional and proactive about us facing our own childhood traumas and our own childhood woundings, and then facing our own parent issues, and then
Right.
realizing that our parents are just human
Right.
and they are flawed.
and extending grace to them, isn't it?
Because they are imperfect. They are flawed, like we are. So if you give them grace and mercy, in the Bible scriptures they talk about forgiveness. I think it's like 7 times 7,000 or 77 times.
It's forever.
It's always been a tough thing for me when I read that. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a stretch. And then they talk about mercy and grace, and that even God grants us mercy and grace, which perhaps we should also find it in our hearts to grant some grace and mercy. And sometimes you can grant mercy and grace, but the person doesn't have to be your friend again.
Yes, I tell people that you can even forgive, but you don't have to. I don't have to be your friend.
No.
I've forgiven. I do not hold it, but I let you go. Isn't it? Yeah.
And I mean, if people were badly wounded by their parents and violently abused by their parent, or I could understand why they would not want anything to do with those parents. But at some point, they will have to find it in themselves to find forgiveness. To lighten the load for them, because what you then do is intergenerational trauma you pass on to your kids. You pass on, so you don't want to do that. So to save your own bloodline, and you need to break a cycle, and you need to break a certain curse. So that's for me is the key thing. That's why I'm always saying to people that the more you know about your family blessings and curses, the more you likely then have to pick one. Or you don't have to save all of them. You're not Superman or Superwoman. Just pick one. And in my case, I've always thought this abandonment issue, I should not do it to my kids. Transcending poverty, I will do it in my lifetime. Setting new standards on literacy.
And you have?
I will do that, and I'll have the PhD. I'll have so that's. And then not become an alcoholic, because my biological father and stepfather were alcoholics. So how do I drink less? How do I not even drink? You see but those are the things I'm hoping that the next generation, I will pass on. I won't pass it on to them. They will inherit new problems. I think you should allow your new generation to inherit new problems.
But not from you.
Not from you. There might be new problems that they have to deal with, because there will always be problems.
So when one listens to you, and yesterday I had a chance of hearing people talk about you, the one thing everyone says is you're very authentic, you're an authentic leader, you're an authentic person that I know and have experienced. And people say Mzamo is an open book. But what is it? Is there something about Mzamo that no one knows? That if we Googled, we wouldn't find it. But there's something about Mzamo that only Mzamo knows.
Wow, that's a good question. I would say for me, it has been the kind of inner struggles of feeling that I am enough. Those inner struggles of finding a way to stop chasing badges, so that I can feel I'm a somebody. Because when you grow up poor, you are a nobody. And so it's a deep-seated feeling of wanting to be somebody. And then, but how long would you be on this treadmill of chasing to be a somebody? And when do you stop? This need to be a somebody. And in this world, a somebody is materially measured, either academic qualifications or a title or money or big house you live in or how many helpers you have or servants. But there has to come a point where that feeling you transcend of always constantly wanting to be of fighting that you were a nobody, but actually you were always somebody, even in poverty. It's just a mindset.
It is a mindset.
It's a mindset. So it's just, how do you develop a mindset that now allows you to feel that everywhere I am enough. And so I've struggled with the enoughness part, like as in, the writer of Catch-22, the fiction, which is an amazing book, Catch-22. He goes to a party, and a billionaire party, and his friend that he took along says, how do you feel that this billionaire makes the money you've made on Catch-22, he makes it in a day? How does it make you feel? And he paused and he said, I have what he doesn't have. And his friend asked, what is it? And he says, enough. I have enough.
Profound.
And for me, that stayed with me, the story of enough. And so that would be for me, and also even not burdening my partner to make me feel enough.
Right. Because then there's that as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Looking for a relationship.
Looking in a relationship for a partner to make me feel that I am enough. And that me feeling I am enough. And that without even working for Google or having a title, or I am enough. And even when I remove myself from Google or a title, I am enough.
Right.
And that's been a difficult battle to transcend this feeling of when do you feel enough?
Right.
For yourself and just for your kids and all of that. When do you feel like you're a good enough parent?
Right.
And be at peace with that, and that you are a good enough parent. So that would be for me my struggle.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's really deep. I think that's a question I ask all the time. But you've talked about love. And you've talked about, implied, your journey of love and, looking also to see if you're enough. But what are some of the lessons that you've learned in your short life of trying to interact with love in your relationships?
Love has been complicated and complex and chaotic for me.
Chaotic. I love chaotic.
I think because when I found like growing up in scarcity, you also actually grow up in love scarcity.
Interesting.
Because it's not just material scarcity. There's also emotional scarcity, because your mom is not present. She has to go hustle and work as a domestic worker. Right. So you never see your...
For all of you, how many kids were you?
Yeah, I have close to 9 siblings. Okay. So you don't see.
Exactly.
So because you and then you and not because your mom doesn't love you, but because she has to go and put food on the table. So she's working night shifts and she's working, so you are actually in not just material scarcity, you are also in love scarcity. So what then you don't learn easily is how love looks like and feels like. But what you learn on the streets, because I grew up in streets where there were drug dealers and gangsters, and what you learn quicker than love is respect. So what you find on the street is respect and loyalty.
Interesting.
So I don't think in my case my foundation growing up has been love. I think the foundation has been respect and loyalty.
Right.
And just being dependable and being respectful. And so I feel like even in relationships, I don't think I entered them looking for love. I think I entered them looking for the things I'm familiar with, which is respect and loyalty. And if those things were weak, it was hard. It's always hard for me to transcend to vulnerability, to finding intimacy or love. So that's been the biggest lesson for me. It's been that love has been super elusive. Right. And not easy to define and touch for me. So whereas, which is no different from me from happiness. These words, love, happiness, or happy.
What does love mean? Exactly. Yes.
They are elephant words. They're too big.
Right.
Whereas respect, and I genuinely, actually, as a theory I hold, is that majority of men don't look for love.
Oh, really?
They look for respect. because that they are familiar with. Because it's either you're learning it on the streets or even at your home. If you are raised, if you're lucky enough to be raised by both parents, what you are seeing is not always love, because most black kids don't see intimacy portrayed publicly. It's probably done in closed rooms, and love and all of that, and touch, all of they see your parents, the mother and father, more in the state of respect, and but not pure love.
So men are looking for respect,
mostly
not love as we see
respect, because I genuinely feel like once you've found a place where you feel respected, I think it liberates you to then start thinking about love.
Okay.
Or about respect and stupid love and doing things. But when you feel disrespected, it sort of just checkmates and neutral everything else. And so I think I'll die learning about love more than knowing respect and loyalty. And I'm not always sure that I am crazy about being loved. I think I am crazy about not being disrespected. And also because growing up under apartheid, another thing I've always known was disrespect.
Right, from them.
From the people who oppressed us, we were always disrespected. So the thing that consumes you the most is never wanting to be disrespected.
Exactly.
But you haven't spent time being consumed about needing to be loved. It's kind of like a thing, not that it's a need you don't have, but it's so dormant and latent in you that the one that is the default is love and is respect and loyalty. And I think maybe over time I will get to know and meet love over time. But I feel like it's a long journey. In this short life I've lived now, I think it's been, and also for me, because if I read books, and I think my love language has been very grounded on acts of service. It's you are what you do. I'm very existentialist in approaching things. So people for me are what they do and not what they say. So that then means my type of love is too grounded on what you do. So for me, I'm not interested in what you say. I'm the type of person that even if you don't say I love you for 7 months, or
you feel it.
I don't have a need for words of affirmation for that. I have a need for what you promised to do, you've done. And you've done consistently. And that for me, which I see it as very, I haven't evolved to anything else, that it's so grounded on respect. Because if you are congruent and consistent, then it's easier for me then to trust you. And it's easier for me to respect you. And then the love part, maybe if I'm lucky, it will flow.
So tell us a bit about this organization that you have been running for 60 years in South Africa, African Men Care. I am quite interested in that, African Men Care, because even in Kenya, I think people are asking, do African men care? Do Kenyan men care? Tell us about what led you to start the organization, and what do you do?
So when we started African Men Care, there was a few of us guys where we sat down and we were trying to decode what masculinity, black masculinity, looks like. How does it feel like? And there were a lot of messages about men are trash, or men are toxic, and men are bad, and men are this, and there's men don't want equality. And gender equality, and there were a lot of programs, but we felt that when we looked at ourselves, the majority of us grew up with absent fathers, and this model of a man we are being asked to become, we've never seen. So we partly felt like there was also an unfair element of being asked to be something you don't know
Right.
and you've never experienced. And we also felt that we needed to teach ourselves how to be the men that we don't know, and how to break the cycle of all of that which is negative in masculinity or
Right.
toxic masculinity. But also we felt that it's not always acknowledged that the things that are toxic about masculinity also are toxic to men. They are not just toxic to women. Men are also commit suicide. They actually completed suicide is 4 or 5 times more men than women. Women attempt suicide more than men, but men complete suicide more than women, 4 times, 5 times more. And men are killed by other men at 8 times more than men are killing women. Men are also killing men. So we kind of felt like there's a narrative that is very imbalanced. And also we felt that if we are going to empower women, especially black women, when they are fully empowered, who are they going to date?
And that's where we are.
So who are they going to date if we don't find a way to do both? Help black men, help black women. It's not either or. It should be and. And so we felt that we should focus on helping men transcend their own childhood traumas, because there is a boy crisis.
There is, even in Kenya, I don't know about South Africa, but
there is everywhere.
It's
a genuine boy crisis. I mean, I was reading a recent book in South Africa. It's titled "Becoming Men." I just forgot the doctor, author, gentleman. He did it as part of his PhD. And when you read that book, another book I read is called Boy Crisis. It's universal. Whether you are in Kenya or in Nigeria or in South Africa or outside Africa, anywhere, there is a male crisis. And for us, it was just to confront that. And then when the rest of the team members who started the organization had left, I then took over the organization and focused it on education, because I was looking for a practical thing to do that will help people transcend poverty and become free, because I'm very obsessed with freedom. And I found like education for me was my ticket out of poverty. So we now have to manage finding boys who are gifted and who happen to be poor, and we help them. So I will take 20 to 30% of my money, because I believe in tithing, but I just don't believe in tithing to a religious institution.
I understand.
I'm suspicious of tithing to a pastor or priest or whoever, because I'm suspicious.
Yes.
So, and I prefer to then tithe. The concept I love, that God, it's true that whom much has been given, much is expected.
True.
But I just don't think I should give to a religious institution or to some religious leader. So I decided I would take the NGO that I started with these several guys who have now all left, and they left me with it, and I will put 20 to 30% of my money, and I will find the kids. So we now have close to 600 kids that we help.
And you're just in South Africa?
So now we have kids in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Congo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and all we do is partner with teachers. So because my mom is a social worker, and then I had asked her to retire early, because she's been working since she was 15. Domestic worker first, all the way till 40 as a domestic. Then she only started working as a social worker late in her 40s. When she got close to 55, I decided to ask her to retire, and then I said to her, she's going to help me run this NGO.
So she has something to do.
Yes, and also because she knows poverty, she knows poor people. I then said to her, you help me, we go to schools, we go to really poor places like Kibera or any favela, and we go and find the kids who look like me, who grew up in the same conditions as me. And a lot of the kids we have in our NGO are same story as me.
Wow.
Absent father or absent parents, poverty, live in shanty towns. So that's the story. So it's a very similar story as mine, but now we want to democratize opportunity and increase transcendence for every black child. And what we want, the template I have is that when Noam Chomsky said to be young, to be black, young, and free and gifted without opportunity is a devil's gift. I took that to heart because I genuinely believe that post-freedom and post-independence, whether you are in Kenya or Angola or Uganda or in Nigeria, to be black, young, gifted, and free without opportunity is a devil gift.
Right.
Because when we were colonized, at least we could blame it on someone. Why we were not progressing.
Right.
Now, we are not colonized, but our politicians have created environments of opportunity scarcity. And now we are having young, gifted, black, and free kids without opportunity. That's a devil's gift for me. And our job then is to eliminate this devil's gift. And democratize opportunity. So you start where you are and not try to solve the entire world. In my case, start where you are. I go to the places I grew up in and we give back there. And we elevate. So we've now had kids who've graduated. We've taken them from primary school, all of K-12, all the way to university. Now we have the very first batch that graduated from university one is a science teacher, 3 are mechanical engineers, and 1 is a filmmaker. Actually, they made films for Netflix. And we don't prescribe. And 1 is a nurse. And now they're doing medicine medical degree to qualify to become a doctor. They are on their 3rd year of medicine.
That must give you a lot of joy.
A great joy because I've always believed that you start. There's a gentleman, I really need to find his name, a Nigerian video I saw once. This gentleman, old wise Nigerian gentleman, says that you start from a life of survival to success and then significance. But it's a mindset. You can be in survival but have a significance mindset. And I want to have the significance mindset where everything we're doing, it should be a life full of significance. And you shouldn't be just collecting the badges and collect. So then you are trapped in survival. Which then is why I think particularly men struggle with retirement. Because their identity is not, their mindset and identity is not wrapped in significance. It's wrapped in success. So when they lose the titles, then who are you? When you're now not CEO or CMO or C-level or this or president or chairman, who are you then? Because that means you are trapped in collecting badges and collecting titles and names because they define your identity and your ego is bloated by these things. Whereas if you move to significance mindset, then you are all about how do I make things better for others, not just for self. How do I lift others up, not just lifting self up only. And so for now, for me, it's just trying to have an even bigger significance mindset and just continue with this NGO. And now we actually have females in the NGO, girls as well. Because my daughters, I have 3 daughters, so it was to them, we're like, but you can't just focus on boys
and forget about the girls.
It's not either.
It has to be.
So we are now focusing on girls. But what we found is that our number 1 biggest challenge with girl dropout is teenage pregnancy. And we haven't yet found a solution to it. It's in that. That's why I always even say to my own kids, the greatest gift they can give me, the greatest gift. If they ask me, what gift do you want, Father? I say, only have kids if you want to have kids. And only marry when you can afford it. not when he can afford it or he wants. You must only have kids or marry when you can afford it. And then also to my kids, I say, if you decide not to have kids, your self-worth should not be defined by having kids.
Right, absolutely.
If you don't have kids, you are still whole.
Yes, and you're still enough.
And you're still enough.
And you're still enough.
And there's enough humans on earth anyway, already 8 billion, and majority are struggling. And we haven't done a great job for 6 billion people already in the world, if not 7 billion, and we've only done a great job for 1 billion. So if you don't add to that misery, that will also be okay. You have actually helped us and lightened the load.
Wow.
So those are the things I would say then become, even for my own kids, with the girls that we empower, is how do we find a way for them to not fall into a scarcity cycle? Because pregnancy, the number one thing that sets women backwards, even academically empowered women, educated, is pregnancy.
Right.
Without doubt.
Without doubt.
Pregnancy and marriage is two things.
Yeah.
Almost even women who are fully empowered, their careers stall.
Yes, it does.
Without doubt, like having kids and getting married. And I'm not saying people shouldn't do those things, but I'm saying they should go in not
When
blind,
and
they should go in when they're ready.
Right.
And I think delay should be better given now as a and one day as a nation, when we have enough money, we should even be helping women freeze eggs. We should be helping, because we should rather today. I even used to think that I got married and I had kids when I was not ready. I feel like there should have been a school,
right,
even an assessment.
Well, life would have done that.
Yeah,
you know?
like an assessment. I feel like now that I know myself better, I don't think I would have had kids. Knowing a lot more about me now,
right,
I think I would have delayed.
Right.
So those are the things I've only learned later. So
Choices have to be made.
yeah, choices have to be made. I mean, also I think as a society we need to accept that if you are born in poverty, you have a far greater chance of dying in poverty.
Right. True. Yeah.
So what gifts are we giving our children if we bring them on this earth in a world of scarcity? And I know some people who are procreation, pro having kids, will probably listen to me and hear me saying, no, we shouldn't have kids. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
when you're ready.
saying when you're ready. And then they'll say, but you will never be ready. Then don't have kids.
I love that.
And because it feels, for me, poverty is a punishment.
Yeah.
And because I grew up poor, I know how it feels like to be poor. So, and I know the pain of growing up in that poverty. It's not fun. It's way better to cry in a Mercedes with an echo. Way better. It's really way better.
I love that.
Than be crying in a shanty town. It's hot. The zinc is hot. The whole thing. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
So I'm more in the NGO. Mine is, how do we democratize opportunity and increase transcendence for every black child, especially black young men? And how do we help them become, because when I teach at universities, I realize that if you take all the black kids that come in, the majority that live with a degree are women.
Right.
Not
even
men.
in Kenya, it is. So there's this imbalance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we are not deliberate and intentional and proactive in closing this gap, all will happen. Femicide, gender-based violence will increase, not decrease.
Exactly.
Because frustrated men will find ways to vent and channel that frustration. And already as men, we are emotionally crippled. Our vocabulary on emotion is so limited. I mean, if you look at young girls versus young boys, young girls, they probably have 100 times more words, emotional words that they use than boys. So now you're going to have all these disempowered, frustrated black men. Who do you think they're going to channel that anger towards? To other men and women.
Right.
They will kill more other men,
Right.
and they will kill more other women. So we're not helping ourselves by with good intentions of empowering women, and we don't do the end of empowering black men.
Right.
All we do in the long run, we create unintended negative consequences for ourselves in society, and we will regret it.
And
so
we are regretting it.
So as the NGO, we're just trying to figure out, how do you do the end and how do you make sure that black men are not left behind?
I like that.
And how do you make sure that when the fully empowered black woman meets their mate and partner, they meet one who's also mentally free, spiritually free, economically free, and they meet each other on a level that is healthy. And they can create new problems, which they will have problems, but at least let them have new problems. So that's the key thing, so that's what the NGO really is. We just focus, and hopefully we'll help as many kids transcend, and democratize opportunities for them and transcend, and then hopefully they will pass it forward and pay it forward. And the key thing I always say to people is, my obsession with significance is, I don't want to be Jesus Christ, because Jesus had too many problems in the Bible.
As well, indeed.
I don't want to carry his cross, but I want to be John the Baptist, the one who baptized the one who saves the many. Even John ended up with his head on a plate. So I also do know that either way, you cannot escape consequences that come with your belief. So even John died. Yeah. And he might not have been on a cross, but his head was on a plate. So I know that I can't run away from the pain of a head on a plate or a cross. But I prefer him, John the Baptist, because he was willing to baptize the one who saved the many, and he didn't have ego. And he even says, now my time has come to shrink, so he may increase. That for me is profound, that someone can have that life of significance. He had a significance mindset, that he didn't see himself as big, and just because he was a great John the Baptist. And so I like him as a character, because I find him interesting for me, and I feel like the NGO is modeled around him, that we want to baptize all these kids, and we hope one of them will save the many, and we hope they will save many other black men, and in return the world becomes better place, because the world will not become a better place if men are broken. I like that. The world will not become a better place if men are broken. What a way to finish and end this podcast. Mzamo, it has been delightful. It was everything I thought it would be. Thank you.
And more. And I know you have to rush to the airport. And I wanted to end with Rumi, one of my favorite poets, and I know you love Rumi. And Rumi says, whatever purifies you is the right path.
Amen.
I will not try to define it. Your, apartheid, your absent father, the poverty has purified you. We will not seek to define it.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
you.
a lot. Thanks, Dorothy.
Bye-bye.
Okay.